Hi, my name is Barry Armour. I'm with Bay Area Photo Club, and today I wanted to just walk through a quick image processing session of HDR, the way that I do it. And basically, I'm going to start with three different images that are taken using the exposure bracketing setting of my camera. And I'm going to be using these three images. And what this exposure, the exposure automatic exposure bracketing does on my camera is I have it set to take one image at the exposure that the camera detects as the correct exposure for the scene. And then it takes one photo that's two stops higher and one photo that's two steps lower. So you end up with a range of exposures. And the high dynamic range, or HDR processing, is going to take bits of each of these photos to organize into one photo that has what the program deems as the best exposure for the three images. So I'm going to go into my software that I use for that that's called Photomatix Pro. And this is version 4.2. And I'm going to load those brackets for those photos. So I'm going to browse back into the files here. And I'm going to select these three images, which were the first three images in this file. Press open and say OK. That's going to give me some basic options. I usually just leave these on default unless I have some problems or something. If your first results on default aren't successful, you don't like something, and you've got problems with ghosting or noise or chromatic aberrations or the alignment, then you can come back and do it again and adjust some of these settings for that. It's always best and quickest to just start with the default and see if you're okay with the results. So I'm clicking OK. It processes these pretty fast. It does alignment, and then picking the best parts from each image to bring up into the software where you can do a whole lot of modifications using various different sliders and settings that are built into Photomatix Pro. So this is the default setting that it came up with. And there are other presets that you can see over here in the screen. Usually I like one that's called Painterly, and that's this one. And if you want to go a little bolder, they do that. Here's Painterly 4, which is a step up in contrast. So and Painterly 2 is kind of in between. But I'm feeling today like that I really like the way this default setting for Painterly 4 showed up. It's a little bit contrasty to me back here in the orange area and stuff, so I'm going to come to the strength slider and just slide that down just a little bit, which takes some of the contrastness out of that. And actually I'm going to move it back up a little bit to maybe 85, 86. Okay. Then there's color saturation settings, luminosity, detail contrast. These are all things that and lighting adjustments that you can mess with on your own to, it's just like any software program that has this array of sliders in there. It's about playing with them, trying to figure out what they do and adjusting them, to something that you feel comfortable. One thing I watch out for on using a preset like this is this white point is set up pretty high, and I see that I have some blown out whites. So I'm going to use that slider to reduce the white back considerably. And that area pretty much took care of all the bright spots, the blown out spots that were in the crowd. Here's a zoom in tool where you can look at each area. So I'm just looking at some of the highlights right now to make sure that they really are controlled. And that looks pretty good. So for purposes of this demo, I'm going to say that I'm done. In real life, I would probably spend more time on it than that, but for now, I'm done. So what this does is it's creating an HDR image that's saving in a folder, a subfolder from wherever the source files were located. First, it gives you some choices that you want to do contrast, color, or sharpening adjustments. I do all of that in Photoshop, so I'm always done at this point. And then I save the file as the default name, which is just the 3 different categories there. And I'm going to save it in this file called Photomatic Results from earlier. And I'm going to name it V version 2 because I already have a version of this I did much earlier today. So that concludes the Photomatics part of the process, and the rest of the work that I do on the photos is in Photoshop. So I'm looking for the V2 version of this that I just saved right here. And now I'm going to open that up in Photoshop by double-clicking it. If you use Bridge, then you already know that's how you bring a file, open a file in Photoshop, is by double-clicking it on while it's in Bridge. Okay. And then from here, you can see I have quite a few add-ins. I have the Nik software collection. I also have some add-ins from Topaz that I like a lot too. So, but from this image, one of the basic things I talk about when I'm judging a lot in the club is, because it's a problem that I have with my camera, that I know it's got some dirty spots, some stuff on the sensor that needs to be cleaned up, and I haven't ever taken the time to go send my camera back to Canon to get the sensor cleaned. So I've got dust spots I have to clean up. So I always make a copy first. Control J is the way to make a copy. And then I will start looking at this photo right away at 100% and try to find the areas that I know. I've done this so many times that I know where a lot of the spots are, but I use the patch tool. Under that, I use the spot healing brush tool. And when I see one of those camera spots like this, just hit it with that once, and that makes it go away. And I've talked to people before about, well, how did I know that was a dust spot? Well, I didn't really, but if it looks, my goal is to, if it looks like a dust spot, I don't want to see it. So it's something I'm going to treat. So this comes up on all my photos. I have to go in and take that out. There's left a little bit of a remnant there, but you can see just running this brush over it does a really good job of cleaning these dust spots up in almost all situations. Here's some more. And I'm just not going to take the time in this video to go over all of these and do as thorough a look at it as I'd want to. Just understand that by using the spot healing tool, it's real easy to fix these. If your camera's lens is not as dirty as mine, it won't take you near as long as it takes me. And usually you need to look in the sky, because that's where it's easiest to see the dust spots, but you also can see it in lighter colors of solid surfaces, like the white of this boat or reflections in the water. And again, I would literally take my time and go through this whole photo in a very detailed way to make sure I've got everything, because I don't want to be thinking I'm through with it and go print the photo and then see the dust spots. So I also will take out anything like this that's a real contrasty distraction to the photo. Especially if it's something in the middle of a kind of a flat area. There's a few more dust spots. I'm moving around at 100% by holding the space bar, which gives me the hand for a cursor, which allows me just to slide this around and finish looking at everything. So, all right, I'm going to pretend for now that I've finished my exhaustive search and found everything. And now I'm going to hold Alt and come up here and do Merge Visible, which just creates a new fresh copy of this file. Control 0 lets me see the whole photo again. So I can turn this off and see the difference that it made off and on easy enough, as far as you can see if you look at different areas, the spots coming and going. So just one more thing I'll show you is what I'm going to pretend that I don't want or need to do anything else to this photo. I almost always would, but for purposes of this demo, I don't really want to get into that. But I'm going to go to this Topaz Texture Effects, which is the latest software program that I bought that's an add-in to Photoshop, and it's one I really like. And I'm just going to see real quick what this would look like with adding a texture in it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Normally, when I get to this part, it's fun for me to go through all the different possibilities and really spend time trying to decide which one I think fits best with which particular photo. But I have some favorited types of textures that you'd like to use sometimes. So from really wild, like this one that it ended up on, this Adirondack, to some that are much simpler. The crisp morning run, morning light, prickly pears, a lot of texture, retro streets. These are all just different presets prepared by Topaz and Topaz users. If you're a user, you can save your own texture format to their community, and other people can download them and use them. So I'll just flip through here. I'm going to stick with this, open this Vibrant Grunge. And then just by clicking on this icon in the middle, it comes up with a lot of different options for how you can do things. It's on borders right now, so you can pick any large number of border shapes and sizes and types that you want, or you can just uncheck that and turn it off completely. Same thing with all the different textures. There's lots of different choices in here. So if we pick this texture versus this one, turn it back on, all right, you can see how each of those does that. And you can also adjust, the opacity of the texture. How distinct do you want it to be? So I can turn that down quite a bit. Tons of adjustments in here, from basic adjustments, textures. There's all kinds of borders, and you can do masking within this. It's a really powerful tool. So I'm going to say OK to pretend I like this, although I don't. But for purposes of what I'm doing, it's good enough. So this will save this image and return me back into Photoshop fairly quickly. And then I have the choice to adjust the opacity of the layer if I like this effect, but I think it's too intense, then I can just go back into the regular layer adjustment and tone it down by reducing the opacity. Okay, it's still working on bringing the new layer in here because I haven't seen it show up yet. So give it 1 second. And there it is. So I'm going to reduce the opacity of that because it's just way too intense, down to about 50%, let's say. And then I can turn that off and you can see what difference it made using the texture effects. And for now, for purposes of this exhibit, that's all that I really wanted to show you. And we'll take a little time now to answer any questions that any of you might have.